And of the Friends of the Madeline Island Museum. I think almost everybody knows that. And Tom, we're so happy you're here. I know Tom from way back in St. Paul, and I couldn't say exactly where, but I was an architecture writer. He was an architect in St. Paul, and there we go. So we're very happy that you were able to come up here. And thank you so much, Laurel, both for hosting and for organizing these pop-ups. So I will turn it over to Laurel, who's done such a fabulous job.
Well, thank you. It's only with help from a lot of good friends, of which you are all included. So, but welcome, and my husband Eric, Lein, right there. And of course, Tom Blanck, which I will introduce a little bit in a moment, but he is the architect that worked with Eric's dad, Max Lein, on the addition, the new addition, but it was then 1990s, was new, so it's really kind of old, but, and his wife, Linda Bjorklund. So Linda and I talked together in Minneapolis, unbeknownst that Tom was working with Eric's dad, and then we met up. So anyway, but welcome, and very happy to have all of you here. There is a bathroom right to your right, that first door, and that's the guest bedroom where Linda and Tom are staying. But they opened it up so that you can come in and look, because we have made we did a little remodeling after Max and Mimi died, and there's another bathroom beyond the kitchen. So that taken care of. Really welcome you, and Eric has brochures of this Hodgson prefab house. So it was built in 1936 maybe, or 37, brought over in pieces and chunks and assembled. And the best way to look at the assembly, I think, but I'm not the architects here, is the wing nuts and the bolts that are out on the porch holding the screen vertical wood up. But it just pretty much was put together with a bolt and a wing nut. And then we took out a lot of ceilings. So not this one was always like this, but the other ceilings we took out. But the Griffiths were the first people that owned this place, and probably were the ones that bought it and brought it over in 1936, 37. And then it sold to the Hersenas, Mimi Hersema, Maggie, the mom, and Mimi, who did our first pop-up at John's wonderful spot, Tommy Venom's spot. And then it sold to the Cardozos, and then it sold to Max and Mimi, who had just sold the Mission Cottage 8 on the Mission Hill. So then they moved over here to be on their own instead of with a whole bunch of other people. But 60s, 1967. 67. And then, so then they lived through many summers, and then after they died, then Eric and I ended up with this. So we're really happy, and I just want to make note, we have a few of these brochures that can be given away or purchased for a minimal price. But this is the dedication booklet that Max did for, with many other people, for the dedication of that new wing in the 1990s. So I'm showing you this because on the inside of the Capture Center is this black and white photo of this picture. Tom did that, this time. And I was lucky enough to end up with the real painting. So it goes back to St. Paul for most of the year, but it's in here. And then in this book, it also has a really nice booklet, has a nice little blurb about Bella and Leo in it. And then Tom Venom wrote the piece on Indigenous life for the booklet. And then included is a recipe for Madeline's, little thing. So I had to bring those up. So there are Madeline's here, plus the bakery. And then one last page of Bella's artwork and Tommy Venom, and I think that's it. So I said too much. And that's it. So on behalf of gratitude for friendship and history, I introduce Tom Blanck to you. and then you can start. Architect and more. So.
Well, yes, it's a pleasure to be here, of course, and I think the most joyous thing is being here with people who know more about the subject than I do. I'm going to start at the beginning. Again, just to be a linear recitation of what I know. And you'll find at some point it might become congruent with what you know about it. I met Bella Capser in the late 1970s in St. Paul. And I worked on 3 architectural projects for her right around 1980 to 83. She lived at 420 Holly most of her, well, I think all of her married life. And across the street from there were 3 or 4 houses that were not being cared for. And the city was having some tough times, and she bought 3 of them. And I don't know the address of the southernmost one on the corner of Arundel and Holly, directly opposite her house, and then 2 more that were 80 and 82 Arundel, and then 88 Arundel. And those 3 houses in a row were architecturally significant. And so the first one I worked on for her was, I don't know the address, it's out there on the corner, and that was the home of Max Tolz, who was a German immigrant architect in St. Paul, who was notable for having designed in 1915 the Como Park Pavilion, the Como Park Greenhouse. And, but then his name still survives in the firm name of Tolz, King, Duval, and whoever else. And so Max lived in that house, and then he built a duplex to the north of it at 80, 82 Arundel, and then he built another duplex that became a threeplex at 88 Arundel. And so I had the privilege of working for Bella, restoring those 3 buildings. And they today are quite beautiful, and I think wonderful. And it was her vision that said that those buildings shouldn't be torn down and they shouldn't be modernized, they should be restored. And so it was my privilege to work for her doing those things. And then that was right around 1980, 83, and then about the same time I worked on the restoration of the Commodore condominium, the Commodore Hotel, into the Commodore condominiums after a magnificent explosion in 1978. And we made this 140-room hotel into a 42-unit condominium. And Bella bought 2 units there. And so she became my client again. And not necessarily voluntarily, because of course I was hired by the developer who developed the building, but so she bought units on the 6th floor of the north wing, one on the south side of the 6th floor front as her residence, and then the other one across the hallway as her art studio. And Bella was very educated and very sophisticated about art. She attended the Minneapolis Arts and Crafts Guild School, which existed in its own building, very close to the auditorium, both the new and the old auditoriums, and in South Minneapolis, the south side of the loop. And there she studied ceramics with the grandfather or father of American ceramics from Los Angeles. His name will come to me in a minute. Batchelder, Ernest Batchelder, who is the name and still the name in ceramics in this country. So she studied with him in the process of making ceramic tile, and then she did leather work and made book covers for a number of her books in the library, and then she did printmaking, which of course you see some samples of her work around the museum and in that pamphlet, where she did, I guess I would call them linoleum cuts that are quite wonderful, and then a little bit of sculpture work, like for example a medallion of Graham Johnson, who you've probably all seen samples of that work.
Where's that? I wonder where that is today.
Well, there's several of them around.
And I'll go get that. Sorry.
She's got one.
Was Leo around in the Commodore stage, or
No.
was he deceased?
He died in, I think, 72 or 75, something like that. And so I never met him. But then I had another little connection with Bella Capser, in that friends of ours owned part of this massive castle that they built on the St. Croix, called the Villa St. Croix. And at my 70th birthday, which I can sort of remember, was at that castle on the St. Croix. And then Bella and Leo in 1917 purchased that property and retained Thomas Ellerby to design this 5-story masonry castle, which is quite a place to visit. It's a private residence. It has always been. And I was just reading something about it yesterday, and the furniture on the first floor, a good deal of it was designed and fabricated at Mechanic Arts High School, where the city of St. Paul is quite creative. It was actually called the George Whitbrick School way back when those pieces were made. And so it's still furnished, I think, with furniture that was made at Mechanic Arts High School. And some of the wonderful torchieres on the exterior of the building came from Cass Gilbert's Northern Pacific office building in downtown St. Paul when it was torn down. So it's this beautiful collection of historic objects, and 5 stories of limestone, beautifully set in a bluff over there. But they tired of this very quickly, apparently, as soon as they got it done. Sold it, and then discovered Madeline Island, and started their collecting and building up here. And ultimately, you are all very familiar with she and Leo having created the Madeline Island Museum. And then parallel to that, I met Max Lein, who was Eric Lane's father, who used to live in this home. And Eric lived in our neighborhood on Summit in St. Paul.